Well, hello, creatives community and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to the only tri-cast channel on the interwebs hosted by yours truly on Twitch, YouTube, and our own Discord server. For those who do not know, this is Third Pillar Thursday, and kind of a celebration as to what I am about as a very small time, small press pub content creator. The third pillar Thursday, or third pillar of exploration, involves exploration in tabletop role playing games, with the first and second pillars, for the most part, corresponding to combat and social interactions. And of course, this week we've been doing a long form discussion about WandaVision. So, yeah. Hey, Cam. Hey, no problem. Yeah. Cam says, yeah, you thought I'd stop by to say hello before the spoilers start. And of course, those of us who live around the world, it is evening. Hello there, Omen. Glad to have you here and stop by. Yeah, the third pillar part, the exploration part of role playing games, for me, of course, has been undersold and underutilized, but it really does make up a huge part of our geek culture, even though it sometimes can be a little bit difficult to put them into like a tabletop role playing kind of setting, because it's such a one-off. There's so many things involved in it, whether it's something as simple as those panoramic overland views that we so much loved in the theatrical versions of Lord of the Rings, or it's the classic Indiana Jones traps in a tomb and trying to circumnavigate spears and swinging axes and blades and pit traps and closing walls, moving into like Star Wars, where you have no handrails and you have to run, jump, and swing across large pits in the ground and energy chambers and things of that nature. So the environment really does, and I think has a great impact. It's just very difficult for us to both mechanically and using our imaginations to put them in a game. So that's what Thursdays are all about. Gaster 2 Soul says, so I'm back from watching WandaVision and holy shit. Yeah. Uh-oh, Cam. Better get out of here. Yeah. Wanda can be a cold, cold woman. Yeah. So, okay, for those who do not know, here in the States, Disney Plus has aired WandaVision, and that's what we've been talking about during this week. And if you've taken a look at the thumbnail, and I believe there's actually the image, off to my side here, of there's a scene in the show where the Vision tries to escape the Hex, and as he's trying to push his way out of the Hex to figure out like where he's at, what the rest of the world looks like, he starts to get broken apart. And of course, I mean, it sounds like, his mechanical chunks are flying off of his body to go back into the Hex. And we all know that he's made out of vibranium, some kind of weird amalgam of biology and vibranium, maybe even nanotech or something like that. We really don't know. Yeah. See you, Cam. It's all right. Far more important for you to take a look at the show, because I think you'll really enjoy it. And it's something to it has, to me, it has given us so much mind fuel that I think we are not seeing the forest through the trees, right? There are a lot of people who are upset that the show didn't turn out the way they wanted to, because it didn't expose elements of the Marvel universe they wanted to see. But I think the creative discussions and the dreamlike quality of the show and our ability to imagine, I think that part of it far outweighs the end result of what they imagined, Omen says, but I doubt she's out and out malevolent, at least not yet. At least I hope not. I don't know. I like the idea that she may turn into the bad guy, if you want to call it that way, because this might be one of the best renditions, or the journey of a character like that. Like there may become, she may do a heel turn where we think she's the bad guy, and then she turns around and makes amends for the things she's done. But I like the gray area. You can root for someone. It's weird to say, you can root for a character and their journey without necessarily agreeing with the methods that they're using. You know, and you want to hope that she comes out okay. Gaster Two Soul says, "It sounds honestly terrifying to think that the world around you is nothing, and that you're just this family, a facsimile of what you are now." And oh my, my friend said that White Vision is just Vision now running on Windows 10. Yeah. Oh, that's so wrong. I even like the fact that Bellamy even like curled his lip a little bit, portraying the some people call him white vision, pale vision, unfinished vision, spectral vision. I've heard that one before. I've heard vision, but um, the idea that imagine as us realizing that we're just a some kind of facsimile of like a not artificial, but there is a Fermi paradox that states that um, the entire known universe, all of us are living in a fishbowl of sorts, that aliens have put us into some kind of artificial construct, and all we are living out our lives in essentially what would be an experiment of some sort, or maybe as pets, or like a zoo or something of that nature. So it would be kind of, on one hand, it would seem like, wow, we really aren't in control of our own lives. We're just we are bits and pieces and chunks of somebody else's imagination, and we aren't completely autonomous. But on the other hand, in the show, it clearly stated, and they of course mentioned about the Mind Stone, that um, Wanda didn't just create Vision. How do you say this? Vision was autonomous. He was an individual unto himself. So it wasn't that she just created a an illusion of Vision. She recreated with her power her vision, right? So with his thoughts and dreams, and maybe not all his memories, but that was the vision that she fell in love with, to the point that she wanted to be with the person who had his own independence. And if we were player characters in this world, I think that'd be kind of cool. Um, Knowing that if I leave this world, I'm actually just going to disappear because I only exist because somebody else thought of me. That'd be kind of cool and kind of weird. Mufas is kind of like John Wick. We know he's not really a good guy, but you root for him anyway. Exactly. And there's a little bit of like, we in John Wick, we don't see the beginnings of him, but yeah, there was a part of him that was pretty damn brutal before he became the so-called protagonist of the show, so of the movie series. So yeah. Deadman says in many comic books she was always a bit of a heel. Yeah, she was. She was. I mean, in some ways, like I mentioned the other day, she was a walking plot thread story, walking Deus Ex Machina, where it's like, oh, we need something to happen in a major storyline. Let's go get Wanda. She can do it. She can do anything. Owen's like, yeah, White Vision sounds too ethnic to me. Yeah, a little bit. Except for the propensity of wanting to name. In the old days, it was like every black superhero had to have black in their name, and it was like, oh my god, do we have like as if people didn't know, you know? Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, or Agent 47 of Hitman fame. Yep, because Agent 47 of the Hitman series was pretty brutal. And I guess you could say evil, or taking a turn to go back to throw off the shackles of the, performing acts that aren't honorable or just or something like that. Yep, and like Rickard says, that said, we never see John Wick do anything bad in the movies. Absolutely. Terry Crews for Black Vision. It'd be a wild. That would be a wild one. It's a little hard for Terry Crews to calm down sometimes, but it would be hilarious though. No, 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 no. Yeah, in the comic books, the idea of the the idea of the White Vision was, he had all of the memories of Vision, but none of the emotional context, and it would be pretty interesting. I mean, I suppose since this is Third Pillar Thursday, about exploring different regions. There was a comment made in by I was calling M. K. Rick, who made a comment about like what happens if the world has all these hexes and people are, their pain and grief is creating and influencing the worlds inside of these hexes, and they start to blend in together, and you start to get this Venn diagram of like pain and dreams and loss, and it start to overlap each other, and what happens then. So it would be kind of interesting to have player characters who know that they can't leave their own hex, but maybe they can communicate with a version of themselves somewhere else outside of the hex to get them to continue the mission. Which I suppose, if you really wanted to go like Torg or Rifts, or pull out a stack of your role playing books, you could have different role playing game rules set inside of each different hex, even though you're playing the same character. So you could have a hex of superheroes, a hex for medieval combat, and exploration. You could have a hex for like John Wick spy thriller gun fu action and whatnot. I think that'd be kind of cool. All right, so one of the things that we can pull from the WandaVision show, I believe, especially with Vision trying to exit the hex, is that there may be physical dangers involved in a player character's exploring what this world is like, in your own world, especially if it's one that is controlled by some very powerful outside force. And when the players don't correspond to the archetypes, the tropes that are inside, dangerous things could happen. Like, for example, again, players might. What's a good one? Ravenloft is a perfect example of this, where everyone knows that Ravenloft is a place that exists. It exists in its own pocket universe, and so player characters stumble along. They go inside Ravenloft. They can't get out, and usually the way to get in and get out is story related, right? It's not a matter of what level you are or die rolls. It's all narrative. So, imagine player characters trying to leave Ravenloft, and their bodies are getting destroyed bit by bit. Maybe they turn into a spectral version of their own selves to get snapped back into the place, and then they're like, oh my god, like if we leave, my spirit won't be able to leave here, even if my dead body like tries to tries to walk its way and crawl its way out until I just turn into dust or something like that. And then, of course, i.e., that's basically the ramifications for trying to leave. You can't leave. You need to solve the situation. There may be another element where extremely powerful antagonists are involved in trying to unravel the hex, and they try to contact the player characters outside of a hex, knowing that they can only, speak to them for moments at a time before they get pulled back in. And then maybe an NPC that's important to one of the characters' families tries to leave or something like that. Yeah. Yep. Ricker says, sounds like they're trying to become a better than life junkie. BTL chips, yeah. One chip for each flavor. That's probably funny. The that's from Shadowrun. BTL's Better Than Life chips. Yeah, yeah. Deadman says there's also the multiverse in most comic books, like the Amazing, Wonderful, Astonishing, etc. series from Marvel. Oh yeah, the um, Disney Plus is bringing back the What If series as well. So, as a matter of fact, the oh, what's the what's the comic book series that the current Marvel Cinematic Universe was drawing from? Um, what is it? Are you sure BTLs are in Cyberpunk? I thought they were called like Sim Stims or something like that. S- s- simulated stimulation Sim Stims? Can't remember. Ultimates, that the Ultimate Universe. Oof. I knew there was some kind of descriptor. There was some kind of of adjective, whatever. Yeah, uh, it's in the Marvel universe. The Ultimate Universe was a separate universe unto itself, and they've done this. Marvel and DC have done this plenty of times, where they'll take their core characters, or they'll take a bunch of the Watchmen series was an aside of sorts that the DC universe now has rolled into their own universe, which I think was a mistake personally. But whatever. These kind of things kind of hang out there. Yeah, Deadman says amazing is the current Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, where they take they'll take a descriptor, reflavor the characters into a new universe because they need to get new readership. And if new readership finds out that there's 600 comic books they haven't read before they jump in, it can be a little daunting. So they try to reboot the series. And people have short, society is tending more towards very short attention spans. So rebooting, the New 52 and the Desolation series and what is all the back in my day, it was the Crisis on Infinite Earths area series and Secret Wars, and of course they brought it back again with you know Infinite Crisis and Secret Wars 2 because they couldn't come up with a better name or something for some reason. Uh, so having it, I think it would be kind of interesting to have like player characters are walking around in their normal lives. They find out that their life is just one amongst many others, and when they leave, maybe other versions of themselves are out there. Um, yeah, BTLs and Cyberpunk are the budget cyber drug. Oh yeah, plugging. Well, and there's always been the idea of taking technology and plugging it into your pleasure center. Well, it's not technically a pleasure center because it's like you're living a fully rendered life inside your own head, but as opposed to just plugging yourself into with a battery that's constantly turning your pleasure center on and you're just zoned out. But I suppose they kind of mix together. There's some amazing images in the somewhat boring version of the live action movie Ghost in the Shell. The idea of like these people that are sitting around in robes in dank basements with cables attached to the back of their heads and feeding into systems. I love that imagery of the confluence of like seedy basements and dark alleys along with high technology and well dressed people and stuff. I don't know. I like the way that the that imagery mixes together. It's really cool. Rickard says, I have a hard time with comics because they feel like a soap opera of with no real ends. Elseworlds, what ifs. I don't mind as they tend to be short and complete series. That is the issue with comic books in general, especially people who watch the movies and are like taken aback by like, why doesn't anyone really die and whatnot. And you're like, I guess in my mind I'm thinking, well, in the comic books, nearly every single major top 20, top 30 comic book characters from every iteration has died multiple times and been brought back. Either they've rebooted the series, they've come up with finagled some way to bring the character back to life. They've done the "It's all a dream." They've done the reset button because of someone. Again, Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, having uh, a huge impact on that. So yeah. Now, a number of the hazards in terms of exploring a world, I think we you could start attaching emotional and psychological and intellectual hazards in here and mixing it together. Meaning, like, sure, it could be difficult to, I don't know, dodge bursts of flames shooting out of the ground, or giant monsters, or falling buildings, or earthquakes, or running across rooftops, and we've talked about that plenty of times. But to wrap into that a psychological event, meaning like, if in the WandaVision show, there have been a number of times where characters have tried to express to express to Wanda that things are wrong, and then all of a sudden she lashes out. And the world itself might lash out at a player character that tries to circumvent the rules, even though they know the rules can be circumvented. There might be a backlash involved in it, much like the Vision going like, "Wait a minute, there's a barrier here. If I walk through the barrier," and then his body gets destroyed. The same thing might happen in terms of a player character may try to wake up maybe an NPC, and the NPC is trying to warn the player, like, "Shh, don't say anything." And the player character's like, "Wait a minute, don't say anything. We need to get out of here." And then all of a sudden, maybe the character gets polymorphed into something, or transported somewhere else, or the time edit happens and it rewinds back to the point at which the player character tried to express themselves, and they're like, "Shit, I shouldn't have said anything," because now maybe they have to perform that action all over again, and finagle their way around it instead of going, "Hey, everybody, wake up," um, Deadman says Cyberpunk 2077 had the Sim Cafe with loads of people sitting around with headsets on so they can watch The Sims. Oh, hell yeah. That would be a thing. And if taking this to high technology, plugging yourself into the interwebs, surfing the net, and going into like some kind of dreamscape or pre-programmed region or something inside of a sim, and the player characters have to navigate inside of that, especially if it's one that's been collected uh, together for the experiences of a specific individual. We talked about the television show Reverie, about people living in a dream world, and you have the detective that has to go into the dream world to bring the people out. The danger is that the the NPC is living in a world of their own making. The player characters are the outsiders, and so and this could be a great excuse for, like, why all of a sudden there's a hurricane and the players have to dodge debris and high winds and torrential rains, and then later on they go into a desert or something, and there's a clear dividing line because, hey, this is in somebody else's mind, this isn't in your own. Yep. Gotta get them new episodes of the Simpsons. The Simpsons. Yeah, I get it. But boom. Uh, although Actually, that sounds like a great mission, though. Like, maybe there is maybe there's only something that can be uncovered inside of the sim. So you have to go inside of the simulation. Now, mind you, of course, while you're inside the sim, everything is real, right? We've seen this trope used plenty of times, whether it's in Inception. Hey, we're going to go into a dream world, but whatever happens to you in a dream world, it's real. Or the Matrix, right? Put the plug into the back of your head, and I'm bleeding. What's going on? Well, if you die inside the Matrix, you're really dead. And so maybe finding clues to navigate from one sim to another, unplugging and unplugging, however the plugging is happening, whether it's technological or magical or whatever, transformative or something. Maybe there's the only way to do it is to go inside to get the information and link them together, or a sim was broken apart and needs to be reconstituted. That's also a possibility. Maybe there's a sim that's on a loop, and the player characters jump into the sim, and they they can live through the sim multiple times in order to get all the information they need, because they haven't found all the keys to what they need to find. They're just like, oh, all right, guys, we're gonna have to do this. This is our 8th time going through this sim. Be careful now. Remember, let's keep track of all the dangers that we saw before, because we haven't found the 3rd key or something like that. That'd be kind of fun, I think. Of course, dangerous as well. And uh, while you really don't want to split the party, this is actually a good way, especially if you're running game sessions where everyone can't come to them all the time, and the only way to get into the system is to plug the only way to get into the system is to plug yourself in. And so this is a good excuse for like why somebody isn't there. Well, they unplugged themselves. um, Dead Man puts in a list of cyberpunk slang. It's pretty long, pretty long. I I'm so did they incorporate BTL? I don't see it. Yeah, oh, there it is. Better than life chip, also called dream chips. Okay. An illegal cyber data chip, which provides a user a combination of artificial reality coupled with direct stimulation of different centers of the brain. Though typically designed to provide a pre programmed fantasy, the artificial reality need not be coherent. It can provide a totally hallucinatory environment. Chips are typically designed to burn out after one use, both to prevent the user's brain from overloading from the sustained stimulation and to force the user to purchase additional chips. BDL chips are psychologically addictive, and repeated, frequent use causes permanent brain damage. I didn't think of them being one use. I mean, it makes perfect sense in hindsight. I didn't think of that about them being one use. I figured people would people would get used to it. See, there is SimStim, simulated stimulation of the senses, usually from a DNI recording. Cool. Wildside.com info slang. Thank you there, D. Um, yeah, the uh, boy, if they burn out now, see, I like the idea of them burn. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but the idea that they burn out after a certain amount of time could make like the idea of a hex, even if it's you're going, let's say we go medieval fantasy, and there's a spell that's taken over a particular region, like we were talking about hexes before. If the hex collapses, maybe the player characters have to run around inside of these little micro worlds or apertures to these other different dimensions to go on the mission to get the MacGuffin and then get back out before the aperture closes. Much like player characters needing to go to the elemental plane of air, and they go to this pocket dimension of the elemental plane of air, but they know that they can only stay there for a short time before they get shunted back out, and so there's a limitation of that. The necessity of navigating around inside of an environment, of course, combining everything from traps and obstacles and all that kind of stuff, adding behind that a type of motivation is also pretty important. Like, for example, instead of the player characters just uh, let's go back to the storm idea, right? Someone is so distraught with grief and depression, or like anger or something, that there's a big storm raging, and it's torrential rain, it's bolts of lightning shooting out of the sky, it's debris swirling around, and the entire region is just nothing but for as far as the eye can see, it's hurricanes mixed with tornadoes, mixed with what are some other stormy things? Derechos mixed with so on and so forth, simoons or whatever, all that kind of stuff mixed together. So the player characters go in, they go in on their particular adventures, trying to uncover whatever the mystery is. But like a lair of sorts, with when the players maybe try to retrieve the NPC, the storms might get stronger because the player characters are getting close to the center of what the hell's going on. It's the idea of the small child who's the one that causes all the trouble, but unconsciously it makes it tougher for the player characters to say, they're leaning into the wind to try to get the small child who's holding on to their small doll or something like that, who's just rocking back and forth scared because their parents are gone and whatnot. And the player character's like, come, you gotta come to me, you gotta let this stop. And then, of course, a bolt of lightning strikes near the feet of one of the player characters, causing them to launch through the air or something. So you could add an emotional content. There could be a literal sentient individual who's creating the barriers that are the physical barriers that are around, that the player characters need to navigate around, such as an earthquake happening just so happens to happen in front of the player character's feet. That storm does happen to shoot down a bolt of necrotic lightning, right next to their compatriots or something. Of course, there's a phantasmic like thing where there's an open street, but all of a sudden a brick wall shoots up in front of the player character, and they have to either scale the wall or punch through it or try to navigate around it or something like that. I'm thinking of, say, a movie like Dark City, where maybe the city and the streets and things start to shift and change, or a player character is running down an alleyway, and then all of a sudden down a hall or an alleyway, and you see it does this weird stretching effect where you thought it was only like 20 feet or like 5 paces long, but then it turns out to be the length of a football or soccer field or something. While even though their feet are moving, they're not moving anywhere because the length keeps extending further and further away or something. And I think the idea of that is great. Also, you can play with physics by having someone open up a door and it opens up into a maze, or someone opens up a door which opens to a room, which opens up into another door, which opens to a room, and it keeps going on until they solve the issue or do something different or whatnot. Or maybe even they go into a region where literally the gods are like doing battle above their heads, and it's more or less the PCs begging whatever entity is in. Yeah, non-Euclidean geometry, absolutely. um let's go to our favorite MC Escher imagery, right? Go to MC Escher with the infinite stairs idea that was actually used pretty good in Inception. PCs run up the MC Escher non-Euclidean stairs that is an infinite loop, but then when they run to the top, they can push their enemy over the top of the edge of the stairs because, well, stairs don't do that normally. You can't just walk around those stairs over and over again, right? But that would be kind of cool to go in and do a little, like, a Google search for a number of these infinite loop styled imaginative creations and then making them real in the world, like the Mobius strip. Maybe there's a dungeon that's like a Mobius strip that keeps going on and on and on, and the player characters are trying to get off of it. It's the ribbon, but you latch the ribbon, take one end and twist it, put it back together again, and so you're always on the outside, moving into the inside, moving back to the outside as one continuous loop. Man, there's a ton of them, but my mind is going through too many to like the MC Escher double hands drawing the other hands. That'd be kind of weird. Like a player character that has to. A player knows that they are in this world, so maybe they have to do something where they have to create themselves to get themselves out of it because um, the players need to find an artist to paint an image of themselves so the painting, I don't know, can slip under a door because on the other side of the door, the painting is real. And that's how the player characters are able to get out of it or something like that. Or the players realize that they are just characters in a book that a child is reading. And if the child gets to the end of the book and closes the book, the mission stops because they are no longer characters in a book. Or heck, if you want to get really mind twisty, the player characters realize they are just characters in a role playing game, and you have to run around because the kid that's playing the role playing game is imagining them, and the players are like, oh no, and the kid gets to roll dice to find out if the players succeed or fail. And the players are like, oh no, the kid rolled a 1. And that'd be kind of trippy, although pretty hilarious. Though I think which would be funny if the players are like they jump out of their own role playing game books and they're like, "That's me," and someone else is like, "Uh, wow, I look remarkably like some art station concept art. That's really bizarre." Non-Euclidean geometry. Deadman put it to the Discord. Video of the non-Euclidean geometry possible in Minecraft. I can't play it. Yeah, because even if and heck, if I could get dinged for it, but yep, actually Minecraft's got a number of those things in it. If you get to look at people who make non-Euclidean geometry, oh man, yeah, it won't let me play. Yeah, I can't do it. Nope, it won't let me do it. Mm-mm-mm. Uh, Omen says there are some real world religions that kind of run on that premise, but this might not be a good place to bring this up. Well, anything that brings in some mind feels okay. Like, for example, the I think this comes across. If we could summarize this a little bit, part of the idea of WandaVision brought up, and of course they end up literally talking about this at the very last episode, but the idea that while we feel ourselves to be absolutely positively real in every sense of the word, if you find out that you are just a facsimile of somebody else's machinations, that can be pretty unnerving. So there is a personal, internal, psychological, like coming to terms with the fact that am I a real living being or am I just someone else's a chunk of someone else's imagination? And if I am, does that really matter, right? The other part is going into a world that is from the outside is completely artificial, and then going on the inside of it and going, ooh, I got to deal with a world that really doesn't exist. It isn't real, but I have to go into this world anyway. It's the Russian stacking doll idea that you're going into, a dream inside of a dream inside of a dream. In Inception, each dream layer was as real no matter what the rules of the place are. And I think being able to play with that, especially as far as exploration, I think is pretty cool. Strange how it would be for like a player character to have a. I think of the idea of a player character, for example. This is weird to say, but they look up in the sky and they see the gods doing battle, and then they realize that when they look up, they're looking at themselves doing battle, and then when they look down at themselves, there's like little, like they're like the size of like a small action figure. They realize that the small version of themselves is exactly like the big version of themselves. Or the player characters go walk across a vast desert field, and when they walk across the desert, they see that there's an oasis of sorts, or maybe there's water, and they look upon it, and it looks like maybe there's a thin membrane of water, and then they realize they're walking across their own eyeball or something. That just a very strange-ish twist in like how things work and perceptions of who you are and where you are and whatnot. I think is a great idea to play with. And lastly, of course, there's the tension involved in it. How long does it last? How long can someone survive something? Whether the hex collapses in on itself, whether insanity takes over. That's a possibility as well. The longer you stay in, the greater chance you have of going insane. And retrieving the MacGuffin, whether it's waking somebody up from their BTL chip that went wrong, or was black market without all the safety features that should have been involved in it, or the person who's living in a world of their own imagination that doesn't want you in it, and the further you explore it, the greater chance they have of hunting you down. In the movie Inception, the no-named crunchy NPCs would turn on the player characters. They would turn on the protagonists when they started doing violent things inside of somebody else's dream. Same thing could work here, where sure, there's monsters, but they were just spawned by this person's brain, and the more you try to wake them up, the more monsters start hunting the player characters down. So yeah. Omen says that sounds like something out of Evangelion. Yeah, a little bit. Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell, a bunch of things that are combined together. So, but anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me on this Third Pillar Thursday. Didn't go through too many things, and didn't get down into the nitty gritty of like maybe using some rules or involving any kind of like specificity, but that's all right. We're just here to just talk openly and honestly, and just it's like just before a game, man. We just hang around and do such. By the way, for those who do not know, I'm really trying to grow the channel quite a bit. So just like, share, subscribe, spread the word, follow, all that good stuff. You guys know how algorithms work. And so the more interactions there are, the more people share and get others, the greater the success of the channel as far as the platforms are concerned. So guys, thank you very much for joining me. I am DBJ. Guys, gotta head off to work. You guys too. Go ahead and work those dice. I'll see you later. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for watching.